All right. Frank Seravalli released his top 20 trade targets for the offseason. Who makes sense for the San Jose Sharks?
You're Locked On Sharks, your daily podcast on the San Jose Sharks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, welcome to Locked On Sharks, the premier hockey podcast covering your favorite team in the Bay Area. My name is JD Young, caretaker at the Reef, also the co-host of Locked On NHL. I want to thank you for making Locked On Sharks your first listen. Proudly part of the Locked On Network. We cover your team every day. If you want to be an everydayer, all you have to do is just follow along wherever you get podcasts, or you can watch on YouTube as well. And today we're going to be looking at three defensive candidates from Frank Seravalli's top 20 trade targets article. So we're going to be looking at Bowen Byram, who we've talked about before extensively on this podcast, Rasmus Andersson from the Flames, and then Conor Murphy from the Chicago Blackhawks, and if they would make sense for these Sharks to target as they look to upgrade their blue line, which, of course, we know needs some help. So before we get to all that, do want to let you guys know today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $200 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. So Seravalli released his top 20 trade targets for this offseason last week. And again, we are in the process of trying to specifically upgrade the blue line for the San Jose Sharks, which desperately needs to be better, especially with Yaroslav Askarov coming in. We're trying to make this team better. So we're going to be looking at those three players today, but I do want to go through the list really quickly here. So JJ Peterka, who leads the way, would be super fun. I just think there's going to be a lot of competition for JJ Peterka. So I'm just going to count the Sharks out of that one right now. Chris Kreider, 34. That doesn't make sense for the Sharks. Marco Rossi at number 3. He would make some sense, and that's something I think we might touch on later on this offseason. But for now, again, we're trying to focus on defense. Number 4, Bowen Byram. Number 5, Jonathan Marchessault, 34, doesn't make sense. Why would he go from Nashville to San Jose if he's trying to win? Rasmus Andersson, who we're going to talk about here in the second segment. Number 7 was Erik Karlsson. We've been there, done that. I think we're done. 8, Conor Murphy, who we'll talk about in the third segment. Number 9 was John Gibson, who's been tradable for the last 20 years, it feels like. K'Andre Miller at number 10. Vladimir Tarasenko at number 11 with age 33. No, thank you. Elvis Merzlikins, age 31. Also no team, holds a 10-team no trade list in 2 years. I'm not a big fan of that deal. Lucas Reichel, age 23. Consistency issues there. Eric Holla, 34. No thanks. Morgan Riley, 31. If I think the Leafs maybe trying to get rid of him. I don't know if he fits what the Sharks are looking for. Also 5 years left at $7.5 million. No thanks. Pavel Zacha, Morgan Geekie from the Boston Bruins. Again, we're trying to focus on defensemen, but maybe something there. David Kampf from the Maple Leafs. Demko, who we just talked about last week. And then you have defenseman from the Kraken and Elias Pettersson from the Canucks. So we're going to be looking at 3 guys here who, again, I think really kind of fit what I believe the Sharks are going to be looking here. So Bowen Byram is the first guy. So Byram was a fourth overall pick, in the 2019 draft. Left-handed defenseman. I know you're rolling your eyes already, but we're going to dig into him. So 6'1", 205 pounds, 23, turns 24 here in about 2 weeks now. Like I said, former fourth overall pick of the Colorado Avalanche, got traded, of course, to the Buffalo Sabres for Casey Middlestat. Now it seems like both teams are ready to move on from that trade. So this season with the Sabres, Byram had played 82 games, 7 goals, 31 assists, 94 shots on goal while playing just under 23 minutes a night. Corsi forced, so when he was on the ice, the Sabres took 49.15 shot attempts. Goals for, so when he was on the ice, the Sabres scored 54.79% of the goals. Byram is a guy who has struggled with some injuries earlier in his career, but actually did play his full 82 games this season, which is a good sign for a guy, again, who has struggled over the past couple seasons, has kind of played more and more games. So, but did deal with concussion issues earlier in his career. Looking at his evolving hockey card, 65 percentile player while playing this kind of top defensive minutes, overall 44th percentile, and then 25 percentile defense. So defense isn't where it is, but he does play on the power play, but is usually kind of a second unit guy, especially with Dahlin and Owen Power in front of him. Like, he's never going to kind of get the first crack at stuff here. Projected WAR was only a 3% player despite playing top pairing minutes. So the offense hasn't been super great, but he has scored a lot of goals and finished really well. Has played solid competition with solid teammates as well. But again, hasn't really had a chance to kind of show off a lot of great numbers there. He's kind of his usage. He has been given solid offensive deployment while facing kind of tough competition, and it kind of averages out as a top 4 two-way defenseman with his usage. And then looking at kind of his all 3 zones, what he does really well. He's very good at getting the puck out of his zone, like kind of the defensive retrieval area. He's very good at zone entries, which the Sharks desperately need help on. There's some solid offensive numbers there, and he's definitely a player who does show some skills that the Sharks desperately need. So the big question with Byram is his numbers maybe not as good because he has 2 other guys in front of him, right? With Power and Dahlin, who are going to kind of absorb more of those prime opportunities. And maybe if he's the guy, he can get an opportunity to kind of be that. Or is he just maybe not as good as you would have hoped for somebody who was the 4th overall pick in the draft? So that's going to be kind of the big question with him if you're betting on the upside, right? If from the Sharks' perspective, right? Because if he comes in, he's going to be your number 1 defenseman for the foreseeable future, right? Until Dickinson maybe kind of gets up to speed or whatever else they do. But he's going to be one of your guys. Like, he's going to be that, like, we need you to play 23 minutes a night. You're going to be the quarterback on the power play. You're going to do all those type of things because that's what we need you to do, because you're easily our best defenseman, or projected to be our best defenseman. So for the Sharks, right, and I'm not really going to get to trade because it's the one thing, like, especially with the Sabres, is I don't know what the Sabres are trying to do. What do the Sabres want? Do the Sabres want to get an NHL player that's going to help them now? Because the Sharks don't really have that with, like, on their roster, that other than like Mario Ferraro, and Ferraro, who would be much cheaper and maybe kind of fits a role a little bit better for the Sabres, but or maybe you're flipping picks or something. I don't really want to focus on like the trade terms, because it's really tough in this situation, especially for the Sharks and the Sabres, who feel, I don't know if there's a natural match there. But the other thing too is you're gonna have to pay Bowen Byram because he is a RFA. So what does that potential contract look like? Evolving Hockey here, they have him projected to sign a 8-year deal at basically $8 million. So an 8x8. We joke all the time on Twitter, 8x8. Sign him to an 8x8. Bowen Byram signed him to an 8x8. I do believe, though, since Byram it would have to be a sign and trade, where I think he'd have to technically sign the contract first with the Sabres and then flip, because if the Sharks traded for him, I don't think you can own the 8-year option with him. So I do think there is that technicality with that. So he's most likely to sign a 8-year by $8 million, 21% likelihood. You could also see him signing a 2-year deal at like $5.5 million. That's like a 15% likelihood, or a 5-year deal at like 6.8, 6.9. Very nice. That's like a 16% likelihood. But most likely he's going to sign a long-term, like as long as you can, extension for whoever, if whatever team. So he's probably the best defenseman on the market, but there are going to be some questions if he can be the guy. And he's never had a chance, right? When you go on the Avalanche, you have Cale Makar, you have Gerard, you have Tate, like you have too many guys in front of you, or you're never going to be the guy, right? Sabres have drafted very good defensemen in front of him. And again, just doesn't feel like he's ever going to be the guy. So with San Jose, he would be the guy, and you're betting on the untapped upside of him just kind of having the keys to the car for San Jose. So again, I don't know what the Sabres would want. Maybe you flip 2 and whatever the Sabres pick is, and then they can get an opportunity to draft Misa, and maybe you throw in Mario Ferraro or something like that, and that way they have an NHL player, and then they can also draft Misa. Who knows? That's just, again, spitballing some opportunities there. So we're going to be talking about Rasmus Andersson next, a guy who's maybe started to show some wear and tear, or maybe it's just a small dip. We'll discuss him in just 1 second. NBA playoffs are in full swing, and every night delivers highlight-worthy performances, major momentum shifts, and can't-miss moments. Whether it's a game-winning shot or a breakout player, there's never been a better time to get in on the action. FanDuel makes it even easier to stay in the game before tip-off and live with player props, performance trends, and same-game parlays. Fans have more ways than ever to play smart and win big. Halliburton versus SGA in the finals feels super fun to me. Maybe you just combine points and just have a good time watching two guys go off. So if you're new to FanDuel, it's a perfect time to sign up. Head to FanDuel.com and place your first $5 bet. If it wins, you'll get $200 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right, before we finish or continue with Rasmus Andersson, I do, of course, want to thank you for making Locked On Sharks your first listen. Again, proudly part of the Locked On Network. We cover your team every day. If you haven't yet, perfect time to subscribe. We are officially in draft month as we start to kind of continue to gear up for the draft. And of course, we have our simulated offseason coming in a couple weeks where I try to set the Sharks up for success this off season. So make sure you follow along wherever you get podcasts. And of course, you can watch on YouTube as well. All right. So next is Rasmus Andersson. Andersson playing for the Calgary Flames here, entering the last year of his deal. Former second round pick back in 2015. Play from Calgary, played in the OHL with the Barrie Colts. He's originally from Sweden. And he, again, entering the last year of his deal, and there's some uncertainty about his long-term future with Calgary. Dude who's basically locked and loaded, like you're going to get him almost every night. He's played 81 games this last season, 78 the year before, 79, 82, 56 in the bubble season, 70. Like he's going to play basically every night for you. So Andersson, though, 6'1", 202 pounds, like I said, age 28. He does turn, when does he turn 29? He turns 29 in October. So last year, like I said, 81 games, 11 goals, 20 assists, 56 shots on goal, playing about 24 minutes a night. Corsi force. So when he was on the ice, the Flames attempted 49.65% of the shots. Goals for 40.38% of the goals. Not super pretty there. Andersson playing top line minutes, 6th percentile player, but 50th percentile offensively, 2nd percentile defensively. So the expected goals were very good. The actual goals were not great. So he's a player who looks like there could be some potential meat on the bone there when it comes to more offensive production from him. The defense, though, not super great. Would easily quarterback the Sharks' first power play unit for them because right now they don't really have anybody. Plays shorthanded, not super great shorthanded, though. 53 percentile WAR, so wins above replacement, but that has seen some steady decline over the past couple seasons. 22-23 season, he was about 75%, then 50% last year, and then this year kind of hovering over 25%. But like I said, the offense is definitely there, would help the power play. Faces really tough competition. Of course, he does have good teammates as well. But the defense has really kind of taken a slide over the last couple seasons with him. Player uses chart. He gets offense. He faces tough assignments, but he faces tough competition, but does get fairly good offensive zone starts. They categorize him as a struggling top 4 two-way defenseman with kind of his usage there. So Andersson. Oh, also his evolving hockey cards. Right, again, provides a lot offensively. Struggles a little bit to get the puck out of his zone. Is okay at the zone entries as well, and kind of struggles a little bit with the zone entry defense, which is kind of what you would expect from Andersson. So, I do think he is a guy who I would be a little worried about because he does have 1 year left on his contract. That was at I've totally forgot to mention. So he's got 1 year and about $4.5 million on his contract. So he's a guy you could potentially bring in, see how it goes for a season, and then kind of go from there. I do worry, though, that there might be some cracks. And yes, he has lost opportunities because of Mackenzie Weegar, who the Flames traded for as part of the Kachuk trade a couple years ago. Weegar's kind of taken on a bigger offensive role. But I do worry. I think there's some cracks in the armor with Andersson, where you're starting to see some slip in his play. And maybe he has a rebound season with the Sharks where, again, he wouldn't really have to share any of the responsibility, because he's the guy, right? And he would provide a right-handed shot, which the Sharks desperately need on their blue line. And, so there is some of that where you could just bring him in for a season, and then if things are going well, maybe re-sign him. You could maybe potentially trade him at the trade deadline. Like, there is some opportunities for you to kind of with Andersson where you're not, especially like a guy like Bowen Byram, where you're probably trading for him and then you're locking him up long term. With Andersson, like you have some flexibility there, and maybe after this season you could potentially re-sign him to a more, like 4 or 5 year type of deal. But let's see. I'm actually kind of trying to pull up his if they have his contract extension projection rates now, on Evolving Hockey as I'm doing this. So I do think he's a little bit tough because, like, yes, the guy's going to play for you every night. Like, you're going to get so he's projected to sign a 6-year deal at $8.1 million as a contract extension. So I have a feeling that deal does not age friendly if we're already starting to see some cracks in his slippage in his play. So he'd be a guy I'd be more than willing to bring in. And again, I don't know what the trade would potentially look at, because the Flames they have some couple first round picks in this year's draft, right? And maybe you make that trade and give them, it starts with the Dallas pick and whatever. And then they can kind of, if they wanted to package some of those up to move up to go get a more impactful player, that could be something that they could look to do. Or maybe they just want to try to kind of help to refill the pipeline on the fly here. Is, they've added some really nice pieces in their pipeline. And of course, they do have Zane Parekh coming, at some point here. I think if you're going to make a trade like this, I think you want to try to look more of a long term. And Andersson, I have a feeling, is a guy who's not a long term solution for you, especially for what his role would be for the San Jose Sharks, and that would be to help bring more offense from the blue line, which is, again, something they desperately need. I just worry that there's some potential cracks in the armor and some slippage in play, and I have a feeling in a couple of years, that, especially if you sign him to extension, that contract is not going to turn out super well. So I think he's a guy I'd be okay to bring in on a 1 year deal and kind of go from there. But I don't know if I'm signing up for a long-term extension. And if you're trading valuable assets, getting a guy like that it just doesn't make a lot of sense, I think, for where the Sharks are at. So I think I'm going to pass on Rasmus Andersson. So we're going to look at a guy here in a second, Conor Murphy, who would definitely help the Sharks on the blue line, especially with the defensive aspect. Maybe not as much offense, but I think I'd be very interested in bringing Conor Murphy. And so we'll get to that here in just 1 second. All right, before we finish up, do of course want to tell you guys, or thank you for making Locked On Sharks your first listen. When you're done with this episode, go check out the Locked On NHL Game Night. Every game, every night until a Stanley Cup champion is crowned. Get local analysis on a national scale. Find NHL Game Night on Locked On NHL on YouTube, wherever you listen to podcasts. All right, the final guy here. So Conor Murphy, who playing with the Chicago Blackhawks. They all of a sudden have a lot of defensemen, right? With the way they drafted and how their pipeline is kind of building up here. So Conor Murphy is a guy who's potentially available. Former first-round pick way back in the 2011 draft. He played with the Sarnia Sting. So in the OHL, he was drafted by the Phoenix Coyotes, and then which became the Arizona Coyotes, which are now the Utah Mammoths. But he was then traded to, was he traded? He made his way to Chicago. Yes, he was traded to Chicago. So traded to the Chicago Blackhawks, where he spent the last several years. He's played 12 years in the NHL now. And guy who's, for the most part, been pretty healthy. He played 68 games this year, 46 last year, so I missed some time, but 80, 57, 50. Like, so, you know, he's going to give you, for the most part, he's going to give you kind of be there every night type of player. You are not looking for offense from Conor Murphy, though. Let me just start with that right away. So, but yeah, he's 6'4", 212 pounds. He is 32. 1 year deal left at $4.4 million. Also a right-handed shot, which again, the Sharks desperately need. 2 goals this year, 17 assists, 84 shots on goal while playing 20 and a half minutes a night. Corsi for 45%, goals for 45.7%. So definitely a guy who, you know, is going to be known for his defensive acumen. Playing top line minutes, 49th percentile overall player, 31st offensively, but 73rd percentile defensively. Plays a ton on the penalty kill. Like I said, like don't expect much offensively from Conor Murphy. 78th percentile WAR over the past 3 seasons, 90th percentile even strength defense. Penalty, like he's good penalties. He plays tough competition with not great teammates. Like he's a guy who's definitely a very solid like defensive defenseman. So his WAR has been pretty steady over the past couple of seasons, where it's been right around that 75 percentile mark. And his defense, the same thing, has been very steady over the past couple seasons. So looking at his player usage, like he does not get offensive zone deployments. He faces tough competition, and he's kind of a average top four shutdown defenseman for the Chicago Blackhawks. Looking at what he does very well offensively, not great. Pretty solid getting the puck out of his own zone, kind of at least getting that started there, and couldn't be very good at kind of shutting down the zone transition there. So the reason why I think Conor Murphy would be an interesting guy, because one, I don't think he's going to cost as much as Byram and Andersson are to acquire, because right, like offensive numbers definitely lead the way. So he could be a guy that you're maybe slinging that like Sens pick for, like maybe a late second, or maybe you're talking about a 3rd round pick type of thing for him, because Chicago just they had too many defensemen. They want to get some of their young defensemen an opportunity. So this could be one of those players where, kind of like how Cody Ceci was supposed to be last year, right? Where kind of come in, help stabilize things on your blue line, provide actual defense for you if you're one of those players. I think Murphy would be a great pairing for like a guy like Shakir Mukhamadullin, or let Mukhamadullin maybe kind of explore his offensive side a little bit more. But the two of those can be kind of maybe your top pair shutdown unit. Or if you wanted to put Ferraro, I probably wouldn't put Ferraro. I think they're too similar of players, but just try to find another maybe a little bit more of a puck mover to put with Murphy, or eventually Luke Cagnoni, I think would be a perfect opportunity. But for Murphy, yes, he's 32. Yes, he's a defensive defenseman, but it kind of gives you a little bit of opportunities to kind of do something with him, because if he's great, you could potentially re-sign him to a extension, which I'm trying to pull up right now. So you could either re-sign him to an extension, and his extension, like, it's like he's probably going to be in these like 1 year, like 2.5, 3 million. Like, he's not going to cost, like, it's not a guy you're going to be like locking up for long term. So where he's kind of expected to sign like 1 to 4 year, like 1 to 3 year deals, where it's just, yeah, like 1 to 3 year deals where you can kind of sign him for the next couple seasons. And I think his game will gracefully age. Or two, you can kind of do the pump and trade, right? Where you come in, he plays really well. Teams are always looking for big right-handed defensemen who play very good defense at the trade deadline, and especially with the Sharks going to have the Brent Burns contract off their books here as of July 1st. That opens up a retention slot. And $4.4 million, if you can then, eat half of that to make it $2.2 million, and then you trade that at the deadline, and you're going to get yourself a nice, sweet return, whether it's picks or prospects, for a guy like Conor Murphy, who does a lot of things that teams are very desperate for at the NHL trade deadline. So I do think, like, Murphy, out of these three guys, like, I'm very like, the Sharks need to add puck moving offensive defensemen. But if you're looking for a guy to really kind of solidify the defensive zone and play big minutes and play on the penalty kill, and I think be a guy who wore an A for the Blackhawks, like, I think Murphy, you could do a lot worse than Conor Murphy. And it's not the sexiest name, like, definitely not the sexiest name and potential trade candidate. But I do think he'd bring a lot of value to a young team. And it's not like he hasn't just played for a really bad team for the past, few seasons with Chicago. So, yes, for him, it's going from, one rebuilding team to another. But I do think he would bring a lot of leadership and value, and actually just a good play, more importantly, just good play on the back end where the Sharks desperately need it. So he's the guy I would be really interested in. And like I said, I don't think he's going to cost as much as what Andersson and Bowen Byram are going to cost, just because of the offensive numbers just aren't there. So, but yeah, so those are three players who I think would, potentially make some sense if I had to kind of rank who I'd want. Bowen Byram, 100% going to be the most expensive, but I think going to be the most potentially impactful. Conor Murphy, like I said, I think he would be number 2 out of these guys, because I think the cost to acquire is going to be the cheapest out of the 3. And I think the impact, he can have a massive, massive impact. And then Rasmus Andersson would probably be my 3rd out of the 3, just because I worry about, I think there's some slippage in play. I think he's going to cost a lot to get, and I don't think the return is going to be as great as the other 2 players. So, but that's how I would rank them. So, but yeah, that's going to be it for me today. We'll be back tomorrow. We're going to continue to look at potential free agents. We're going to be focusing on the forward group, as we need to try to find some more middle 6 forwards. So we're going to be doing that tomorrow. So make sure you're following along wherever you get podcasts. And of course, you can watch on YouTube as well. Follow the show on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Locked On Sharks. Follow me on Twitter and Blue Sky at My Fry Hole. Till tomorrow. Bye, friends.